Hear the Holy Gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ, according to Luke.
Glory to you.
He came down with them and stood on a level place with a great crowd of his disciples and a great multitude of people from all Judea, Jerusalem, and the coast of Tyre and Sidon. They had come to hear him and to be healed of their diseases. And those who were troubled with unclean spirits were cured. And all in the crowd were trying to touch him, for power came out of him and healed all of them. Then he looked at his disciples and said, "Blessed are you who are poor, for yours is the kingdom of God. Blessed are you who are hungry now, for you will be filled. Blessed are you who weep now, for you will laugh. Blessed are you when people hate you, and when they exclude you, revile you, and defame you on account of the Son of Man. Rejoice on that day, and leap for joy, for surely your reward is great in heaven, for that is what their ancestors did to the prophets. But woe to you who are rich, for you have received your consolation. Woe to you who are full now, for you will be hungry. Woe to you who are laughing now, for you will mourn and weep. Woe to you when all speak well of you, for that is what their ancestors did to the false prophets." This is the gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
So please be seated. I'm sorry about my voice today, it's a bit kind of gravelly, and it's because I was shouting lots yesterday in the afternoon. The noise in the Beaufort in Guildford was absolutely tremendous. You could hardly hear yourself think, and at the end of it I was quite tired. I really thought Scotland were going to win at times. But, you know, that character, that resilience of the Wales team came through at the end. And one thing that impressed me was Dan Bigger, actually. Because I don't know if you remember when Dan first kind of hit the scene of the international side. He was youthful and talented, he had flair, he had dash, he had charisma, and he also had a hot head. He could flare up at times. And one thing to his great credit is how he has, if you like, grown in character over the years. And yesterday I thought he played an excellent game. Not just because he's a good player, but because he showed such shrewd and steady judgment. He was level-headed and cool and calculating all the way through. And then when it was time for him to walk off, when his leg finally got the better of him, he just said, "Well, that's it everyone, thanks for everything, I'm off now." And he went with a smile and a wave and limped off. And I thought, well, good bloke, good for you, Dan. You know, you've grown up. And that's quite a credit to be able to do that. And the readings today, I think, take that idea of growing up, but they kind of exponentially expand it out into the rest of life. I think the way that Jeremiah opens up, it starts with the word cursed, but it sounds a bit kind of poetic, and then the mere mortals and all this kind of stuff. It's actually pretty blunt if you read it in Hebrew. Aruach ha-geber, cursed is the man. And the word geber there, or geber, for a man, is derived from the word for strength. And you get the word gavor, meaning a warrior, a mighty man, a strong man. And thinking about that, kind of ruminating on that, I was thinking of the Gaborim, the strong men that went out yesterday to play rugby on the field at Cardiff. We saw all the Gaborim, all the Geverim, all the strong men out striving away, sweating and grunting and thumping each other and doing all they could to overcome each other. And he says, and it's about trust, who trust in the Hebrew it says in Adam, ba'adam. And the word Adam there obviously harks back to the story of Adam and Eve and the creation story. He made man in his image, he made Adam in his image. But also the idea of Adam who sinned and Adam who died. And the generic idea of the human being, with all the, if you like, junk that comes with being a human being. All the fallibility, all the flaws, all the futility, all the dust and nothingness, if you like. It's a pretty negative kind of image, really. And then they make flesh their strength. Bizarre. Meat, if you like. They just make their flesh their strength. I was thinking about when you watch kind of celebrities in the limelight, sometimes instead of growing in character, they decline. And I remember, I'm not going to say who it is, but I remember watching an actress kind of in the ascendant. And then at a certain point, I thought something's gone wrong in her. I thought she's actually believed her propaganda. And the Greeks had this word hubris, meaning what you might call arrogance or conceit. The idea that somehow people become arrogant when they become successful. They become conceited. They become somehow full of themselves. They lose sensibility. They lose what you might call the proper humility. There's that kind of myth that at one time the emperor in their triumph coming into Rome would have a slave whispering in their ear all the time, remember, you too will die. And that idea, that whisper, memento mori, remember, you will die, was a common theme in the Reformation in the sort of 17th century. That is simply who we are. That however successful we are, however glorious we might feel, however powerful we might feel at any time, we are going to die. And everything we do will turn to dust. And so we can always, if you like, qualify whatever we think we've achieved or whoever we think we are with that knowledge, with that certain knowledge. And none of us are going to be let off. And this thing, cursed is the man who trusts in man, whose strength is in his flesh. It's a kind of imprecation of that. It's a kind of condemnation of that way of thinking. No matter how successful you are, no matter how powerful you are, no matter what you think you are, no matter what you think you've achieved, you are cursed unless you take to heart your fallibility. But then it turns it around. Baruch, blessed. There's two ways of saying blessed in Hebrew. This one means, if you like, to flourish, to grow, to multiply, to blossom, to be fruitful. And it's the one who it's the same word, gever, but the one who trusts in the Lord, whose trust is the Lord. It says it's emphatic. And the psalm echoes that sentiment. Happy is the man, asher ha'ish, who does not follow the advice of the wicked, who does not go in the way of sinners, or sit in the seat of scoffers. It's a slightly different emphasis, though, in the psalm. There he's saying, as a consequence of not doing these things, this man is happy. He's happy because he is flourishing. He's happy because he will be blessed. Because he will be like a tree planted by water. I think it's a great image, that, a tree planted by water. When we lived in Zim, we used to have these satsuma trees that never ever had any fruit on them. They used to put out leaves, but they never actually fruited, they never blossomed. And then one year we had a cyclone, a tropical storm. We had 6 feet of water fell, 6 feet of rain. And normally we get 1 foot, so it's like 600% of the normal rainfall. And apart from the bridges washed away and the destruction brought about the floods and all that kind of thing, our fruit trees finally fruited. Our satsuma trees absolutely exploded with fruit. It was amazing, it was awesome. We had buckets and buckets of beautiful satsumas. They were absolutely fabulous, they were lovely. And then the next year we got a few, and then after that, back to normal. No fruit. So now I know the only reason those trees were not fruiting was because they didn't get the water. There just wasn't enough water. We watered them regularly, but not enough. And so we were just resigned to the fact that was them. And so that idea of the tree planted by water, you imagine the desert place, the dry place. You imagine a stream, a little brook, relief to the eye in a dry, dusty place. And then out of all the barrenness, there's this tree there, standing there. And against all expectation, if you like, against all the dusty landscape around it, this tree is green and fruitful and flourishing because it is near the water. And that's the man, the happy man, who does not sit in the seat of scoffers take the path of the sinners or take the advice of the wicked. They'll be blown away, it says. He is, if you like, the blessed man of Jeremiah, whose trust is the Lord, who sends out its root by the stream, who shall not be fearful when the heat comes. The heat, if you like, of the hardships, the vicissitudes, the troubles of life. If your roots are well founded, if you know what to trust in, then when trouble comes, it will not be too distressing. It will not overwhelm you. It's not trying to belittle how deep trouble can be. It's not trying to somehow make out that it's not a problem. But it's saying that when it does happen, you will have the resources to deal with it. You will be supplied. Unlike the dry, dusty landscape around, your roots will find the water because it's running there right beside you. And there's a curious correlation with the reading from the Luke, because Luke records these words of Jesus. Another way of saying this would be happy with the poor. Well, poverty isn't normally regarded as a cause for happiness, is it? And I don't think people then thought it any more so than now. If anything, then it was meant even worse now, because frankly, we, even if we're not very well off in this country, can still gain access to healthcare and education. And there's still housing, and there's food banks, there's benefits, there's all kinds of things. So actually, even the poorest members of our culture have probably got a better life expectancy than the Roman emperors, because our life is abundantly more plentiful than theirs. So when Jesus said happy are the poor, he's talking about seriously life-limiting expectations. He's talking about serious hunger and destitution, about lawlessness. In a time when people that weren't rich couldn't manage their own law enforcement. When people that weren't rich couldn't eat and simply died. He's saying they're happy. I mean, how bizarre. How on earth is that good news? How can they be happy? And then he says, happy are those who are weeping. Why are people weeping? Well, it's because they're upset. How can that be happy? Happy when people hate you and exclude you and revile you and defame you on account of the Son of Man. I think partly what he's doing is he's inverting what you might call the expectations of the world. And I think this is where it comes back to, if you like, the character and things. Because he's not naive about what the world is like or what life is like. He knows what it's like. But he also knows what we're like. And I think he's cautioning against that arrogance that comes with prosperity and success. He's cautioning us against clinging on to the hopes of the world and the things of the world. And he's also, I think, reassuring us about our sense of vulnerability, our sense of emptiness, which is inevitable. All people feel it, no matter how rich or successful. Aristotle Onassis famously said there's always someone richer. There's always someone that's got something you haven't got. No matter how gifted you are, no matter how clever you are, no matter how expert you are, there's always someone that can do something better than you. There's always someone that's going to make you feel small in some way if you allow them to. There's that film Enemy at the Gates where the communist propaganda agent says we tried to create a society without envy by basically taking everything from everyone and levelling them all down. But, he said, there is always something to envy in someone else. There is always something. Their good looks, their friends, the way they wear their clothes. There's always something which you haven't got. There is always our mortality. We're all going to die. And so Jesus wants us not to cling on to the things. He wants us, if you like, to embrace our vulnerability, our frailty, our fragility. He wants us to embrace, if you like, our emptiness, our sense of emptiness. Not because it's good in itself, but because it leads us to the thing which is actually better. Because he says, he qualifies this all on account of the Son of Man. And this is where it comes back to Jeremiah in the Psalm. Because the happy man of the Psalm is the one who meditates on the law of the Lord. The happy, blessed man of Jeremiah is the one whose trust is the Lord. In other words, that is what really matters in life. That is, if you like, what actually lends meaning and purpose and fruitfulness and goodness to everything else. That is what actually lends goodness and meaning and purpose and fruitfulness to life itself, without which we are barren, we are empty. And no matter how wealthy or prosperous we get, we're simply deceiving ourselves if we think otherwise. And so Jesus is saying, if you are easily deceived, if you are misled into thinking you've arrived, that you've got it already, you don't need anything else, you are miserable because you are going to suffer for it. He's cautioning us, woe to you who are rich, woe to you who are laughing, woe to you who think you've got it all now. Because you haven't. And one day you will find out how little you have. But those of you who are conscious of all these things, who are conscious of the nagging emptiness, of the pain, of the futility of your existence, conscious of how weak and small you are, and conscious of how much you need, you are happy because now you know where to find it. Because he says, I will give it to you. I will fill you up. I will quench your thirst. I will comfort your grief. I will fill your emptiness. As I would do for anyone who asks. Therefore, the happy ones are the ones who ask. And the ones with their woes are those who don't think they need to ask. Because everyone needs the same thing. This is, you like, the great leveller, the great equality of what it means to be human. That we all need the same thing. We need to live. And at the heart of this whole thing is the idea of life itself. The tree planted by water. The one that does not wither. The one that bears its fruit in due season. The one that blossoms without fail every year. The one that stays green. The one that's not afraid of the drought. It's the idea of the picture of life itself that they're referring to. And so he's urging us to think of where we can draw from the water. As Jesus said to the woman at Samaria, if only you knew who was speaking to you, he would give you living water. And she, completely missing the point, says, can't I have a tap in my house? But she said, he is talking about himself, the giver of living water. Blessed are those who are thirsty, because he says, I will quench your thirst. I will give you to drink what you really need. So when we feel the doubts in ourselves, when we feel our emptiness and our vulnerability and our smallness and our weakness, and when we feel our lack, then we can be comforted knowing that the Lord will meet us. And when we think everything's just fine, then we can caution ourselves thinking, remember, you're no more than human. Thank you, everyone.